So in this video, I will go over 30 signs your ex will eventually come back. To be clear, just because your ex displays any of these signs, it doesn't necessarily mean they will actually return. Think of them more as signals of high interest and not necessarily guarantees for reconciliation. So let's start with number 1, your ex initiates contact. This is definitely a sign they will come back if your ex's contact is A, about you as a person, B, isn't about logistics like children, pets, living arrangements, work, shared possessions, and C, isn't indirect. So this means contact like social media tagging, liking your ex liking your social media post, commenting under your profile photo, watching your story on Instagram, that kind of stuff. Now, an example of a contact that's direct, that's what we want, is when, for example, your ex tells or texts you something like, hey, this restaurant reminded me of our first date, or when they ask something like, hey there, just checking up on you, how you doing? Really, it's that simple. Now, as for sign number 2, that your ex might eventually come back, it's when they contact you regularly and they respond quickly and enthusiastically. Now, this is usually a sign your ex will come back, but please approach this situation cautiously and do not jump to any conclusions too quickly. This potential sign could mean different things to different people, so there's always context to note. For instance, if you're talking about with your ex about a shared work project and your ex responds quickly, that's likely not a sign of interest. Yet, it probably is if they respond quickly when discussing what you've, let's say, done over the weekend. Sign number 3, your ex is curious about you. So for example, they keep asking you how you're doing. They keep asking whether or not you still are hurting from your breakup, how your studies are going, how your career is unfolding, or even how your dating life is turning out. The more questions they ask, and the more personal and inquisitive that they are, the more they are probably interested in you. Number 4, your ex keeps contacting you even though you've told them to stop. To translate this for you, they're panicking. Perhaps they're even desperate. On the one hand, this is good, it's a clear indicator of interest. However, on the other hand, it can be quite disastrous. After all, you just can't build a stable and healthy relationship on this bedrock of panic and desperation. As for sign 5, your ex might eventually come back, your ex drunk texts or drunk calls you. So, those 1 a.m. monologues that your ex puts on you about how much they hate you but still miss you, but only because they want to fuck you, but then again would consider something a bit more serious. This is a good sign, especially if your ex keeps doing it over and over again. As for the 6th sign on our list, your ex reaches out on special occasions or holidays. So birthdays, anniversaries, Christmases, Easter, Thanksgiving, these are like the most common culprits. Note, however, that if your breakup happened a long time ago, this probably isn't a sign your ex will come back, but only a simple gesture of kindness. As for sign number 7, your ex keeps creating excuses to talk to you. For example, they say something like, hey, I just remembered I left something at your place. Or it's when your ex tells you or asks you, hey, how are the apartment renovations coming along? Now, if it's not obvious already, your ex couldn't care less about these things. Chances are they're just using them to get in touch with you because they miss you or are too afraid or embarrassed to be upfront about their feelings. As for the 8th sign your ex will eventually come back is when they apologize for what went wrong. That is, when they own up to their mistakes, they admit them. For instance, they say something like, "I'm sorry I acted so controlling when we were together. I know I have a problem. I'm getting help tomorrow." Or when they say, I really did neglect your needs. I'm really sorry I wasn't there for you. I wish I could go back and fix my mistakes." All of these are great signs. As for our ninth sign, though, it's when your ex prolongs your conversations. Meaning that whenever you would like to end a conversation, they come up with more questions to keep you from getting away. Now, sometimes, sure, this doesn't mean anything. But if you notice your ex is repeatedly prolonging conversations that should have ended like 5 to 10 exchanges ago, it's a really good sign that they're still interested. Another good sign is sign number 10, your ex bringing up past hurts. For example, this is when they tell you something like, "When you spent the entire week working, only coming home to bed, it made me feel really inferior." Or when they tell you, "Hey, I got really upset when you pulled out your phone whenever we had lunch together. It felt like I wasn't interesting anymore." Statements like that indicate that your ex still cares, so it's wise to interpret them as indicators of attraction. As for sign 11, your ex brings up old memories in good light. This is when they say, for example, "Remember that spontaneous road trip that we went on where we explored a bunch of those new places together?" Or maybe your ex says something like, "Remember when we had that amazing picnic in the park and laughed so hard we couldn't stop?" Or when they say, "Remember when we went to that park and I snorted cocaine off your tits while you were having an epileptic seizure?" Good times. Basically, whenever your ex starts to talk about the good memories you shared, that could be a very good sign that they still have some feelings for you. The same goes for sign 12. Your ex places themselves into your orbit, meaning they purposefully go to places and venues where they know you will be at. So if you keep seeing them wherever you go, it may be because they are deliberately placing themselves there to make it easy for you to strike up a conversation and obviously re-attract them. As for sign 13, your ex will eventually come back. It's when your ex makes non-accidental eye contact. Now, the theory goes that humans, we are wired to make eye contact with whatever we find interesting and are curious about. So if your ex keeps giving you glances or, keeps checking you out when you're near them, or if they stare at you for more than usual while you talk, they're probably still interested. As for sign 14, your ex displays positive social cues and body language. For instance, whenever you are interacting in person, they face toward you, they lean in, they smile a lot, they laugh, perhaps a bit too much at your jokes, they touch you lightly, they stand closer to you than usual, or keep their arms relaxed and at their sides and gesture with open palms. Sign 15, your ex ditches their friends for you, meaning they cancel their plans and leave their friends behind so they can spend more time with you. Now, this is often a very difficult thing to do for an ex, so consider it a huge sign they will come back if they actually do it. As for sign 16, it's when your ex stays in touch with your family. Nevertheless, always consider context here. Because if your ex doesn't have any good reasons to stay in touch, yes, it's probably a good sign. However, if they're simply close with your family, it probably means nothing in terms of them still feeling something for you, something romantic for you. They just probably care about them, and that's pretty much the end of story. As for sign 17, your ex stays in touch with your friends and asks about you. For example, they Ask your friends about what you're doing, how you're feeling, what's going on in your life, if you miss them, if you still love them, and whether or not you ever talk about them, or at least mention them. A really good sign, by the way. The same goes for sign 18. Your ex defends you, another really great sign. So this is when they, for example, take your side when people are talking shit about you, or perhaps they actually got into like physical altercations with those who want to do you harm. Sign 19. Your ex blocks and unblocks you. Now normally these block-unblock gestures are simply made out of kindness, so I wouldn't think much about them. But if your ex keeps blocking and unblocking you, maybe like week in and week out, then that's a good sign of interest. It means that they are unsure, specifically, about whether they like you or not. Which means it means that while they might not necessarily love you, they definitely don't feel indifferent towards you, let alone hate you. Sign 20, your ex keeps making social media posts related to you. For instance, they are splattering their profiles and their news feeds with these cringeworthy inspirational quotes, with sayings about relationships, about empowerment, about independence, breakup motivational fluff, or maybe they make and publish posts that directly address you or the breakup. Sign 21, your ex tries to make you jealous. Maybe they start posting pictures with attractive people of the opposite sex on social media. Maybe they share updates about how much they're dating. Or perhaps they start bragging to their friends about how great they're doing and how much fun they're having, hoping that that news eventually reaches you. Sign 22, your ex gets jealous when they find out that you're dating other people. Now this is a dead giveaway. If your ex didn't have any feelings for you, if they just, didn't really want you back in their life whatsoever, they just wouldn't give a shit about your love life. Now, an offshoot of this sign is when your ex tries to even sabotage your romantic relationship, your new romantic relationship, or your potential romantic relationships. As for sign 23, your ex keeps or shows off something that was yours or that you have at some point given them. Now, this is most commonly a piece of clothing, jewelry, or some random trifle or trinket that you gave them. Think of it as some sort of a comfort object. That is an item used to provide your ex with psychological comfort while you are not there with them. It's a big sign of interest, so keep an eye out for any such sorts of objects or items. And as for sign 24, it's when your ex is second-guessing the breakup. Now, to be fair, we all second-guess our breakups, right? So it's normal if your ex does it from time to time, and it doesn't really mean anything. But if they keep second-guessing to a point where it becomes this borderline obsession, then that's a sign they will eventually come back, or at least a sign that they still feel something for you. As for sign 25, your breakup was never official. So, if your ex never told anyone that they, let's say, broke up with you, that could also indicate that they will return. But then again, they may be just embarrassed about sharing the news, which, to be fair, is typical for, from what I've seen, teens and young adults, or just like very insecure people. As for sign 26, you had a on-off relationship with your ex. Now, this is a relationship where, for context, two people continually break up and then get back together. And while cultivating this kind of a relationship, yes, it does mean your ex will eventually come back, as is this typical pattern probably. It's a pretty toxic dynamic to get caught up in. So I suggest if you are caught up in this on-off relationship toxic dynamic thing, you should break things off for good. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of continual drama, a lot of headaches, a lot of relational problems, and a lot of resentment. And you don't want to really deal with that long term. So Have the self-respect here if this is actually the case with you, end these kinds of toxic relationships. Or at least if you get back together with your ex, go get help, go get therapy, go get some couples counseling, stuff like that. But anyway, that's a topic for another video. For now, let's go onwards to sign 27. You broke up with your ex in the heat of the moment. And look, sometimes emotions, they make us say or do things that we didn't really want to say or do. One of which is ending our relationship prematurely, or maybe even unintentionally getting our ex so riled up that they end it. Now, people usually get back together relatively quickly after such mishaps, so this would qualify the whole thing as kind of a sign an ex will come back, based on simply my knowledge here. As for sign 28, your ex talks about a future with you. So, to give you a few examples, they bring up cool date ideas, plans about trips you would go on in the future, or even more serious stuff like buying a pet someday, getting married, having kids, or settling down. All of these are solid signs you still have a chance of mending things for good. Now, as for sign 29, your ex expresses pride about your achievements and personal growth, meaning they congratulate and compliment you often. The more the merrier. However, note that if it's been a long time since your breakup, this could be just like a polite gesture, a respectful gesture, devoid of any romantic interest or intentions, so keep note of that. And finally, for sign 30, your ex shows the painfully obvious. For example, they're all over you, they keep touching you, they keep being affectionate, they buy you gifts, they write you notes or poems, they sprinkle many affectionate emojis through their text messages, they compliment you profusely, they seek your approval and validation to a healthy degree, so not all the time. They tell you how much they love and miss you, they ask you to meet up, or they directly express how they want to get back together with you. So hope you enjoyed this video, hope you learned something new. If you want to go deeper into my process for getting an ex back, download my reattraction cheat sheet, link in the description down below this video. And with that being said, take care.